everybody who's new here. My name is Ronja. I'm from south of Germany and I'm a fashion designer. Since I love to develop garments which are multifunctional, which are transformable, which are reversible, I thought this is my place to create these garments, to share them with you, how I made them, and maybe I can inspire you to do these garments, to get creative and to make yourself also multifunctional garments, because I think this is the way to make a sustainable solution for consumption problems when it comes to garments. Because I think when you have garments that you can interact with, you can get creative with in the way how you want to wear them, how you top them onto something. And I think this is what makes the garments connect to you in an emotional level, and this is why I love creating these kind of garments. So I created this top. I also made a pattern, so if you want to recreate it, just click on the link below and you can purchase the pattern, and then you can follow me step by step and see how I made this top. And if you want to see more videos where I create reversible, transformable garments, click the subscription button, because my head is full with projects of garments that I want to create, that I want to make patterns for you guys, so that we all can have a more playful, enjoyable closet. So let's get started before spring breaks, because this is like the perfect item for spring summer. And if you're like me and you like to be playful with your closet, with your garments, then this is the perfect top for your closet.
We will start by printing out the pattern, then we tape it together and we cut out the pattern pieces. So now that the paper pattern is done, we will adjust the size to your body fit, because this is the nice thing. Whenever you sew something, you can make it totally fit to your body. So therefore, you're just measuring the circumference of your waist, the circumference under the breast, and then the vertical distance through your breast, like above the nipples. So once you have your measurements, you can check in the size table, which I give you, which size does fit you, and then you can also decide if you want to make it fit better to your body type. So then you can, either way, you take a smaller size and you add a centimeter or how much ever you need, or you take a bigger size and you cut something off. I would suggest you to make this in the center back. Since the pattern is the perfect fit for an S and I'm that size, I just left the pattern how it was, and then I cut out the pattern pieces. Make sure that you add 1 centimeter seam allowance on each side. And for fabric suggestions, I would recommend you to go with a cotton, a lightweight cotton, or you can go with viscose or a lightweight wool. And if you want to reuse old clothes like I did here, I reused old wool pants, which were light fabric. You could also reuse old man shirts, which would make a nice optic. And especially since it's a reversible top, you can take 2 different man shirts, and then you have like 2 interesting patterns on each side. So here you can see, since I used old pants, that I then have a seam there. But I like that kind of detail when you reuse old clothes, then you have always these nice extra seams which kind of tell that you reused something, but then it's not so obvious. So I just like this hidden message within the garment. And just remember, you need each pattern piece 4 times. For the ribbons, you can decide either way. You buy a ribbon that you really like, or maybe you have one at home. I decided that I'm going to sew the ribbons, and I was glad to find the same fabric from the same quality I made these pants out of years ago, and then I could just cut out the long stripes I need to make the ribbons. So, and here we go. I just show you quickly the stitches I tried out. I like when you get creative with what you have, and mostly all domestic sewing machines do have some special stitching programs, and you can just try out which one you like. I decided to go for one which is not quite a straight line but has these little dots, and I really like the optics, so I decided to go with this. So now I finished all the pattern pieces with the stitching, and I really like the detail, and it took almost an hour, but I think it's totally worth it since we want to wear that top for a couple of years at least. And now we have to iron these pieces, and we also have to iron the straps, and then we just top stitch them. Since we need a really long ribbon for the straps of the top, I had to sew the stripes together, and therefore you just put them on top of each other in a 90-degree angle, and then you top stitch them in a 45-degree angle, as you can see here. The white is the top stitching. And once you're done with that, you just iron it, and then you cut it like 1/2 centimeter like I did here. And then you're just good to go to iron the ribbon the way I did here. So you just fold it on each side, you iron it, and then you fold it again in the middle. And a tip here is the better you iron, the better it will turn out in the end. And make sure that the ribbon has the same width everywhere. And once you're done with ironing, you just top stitch it. And this is how the ribbon turns out. I top stitched on both sides because I did it with white, because it fits the embroidery. And then I thought it just looks better if I do it on both sides. If you're top stitching in the same color than your upper material is, it should be okay if you're just doing it on one side, if you like that. Once you're done with that, just cut 3 pieces of the ribbon in a length of around 5 to 7 centimeters. We will make loops out of these pieces to adjust the straps. So now we prepared everything, and we can start sewing the pattern pieces for the top together. So we start with the bottom part, and therefore we sew these 3 pattern pieces together. And remember, friends, we need to do it 2 times, first from the upper and then from the lining, or as you would say, first from fabric 1 and then fabric 2. And when we sew the upper together, we just need to close the center back. And when you're done with sewing it together, make sure that you iron the sew allowance apart. And then we just take a part of the ribbon and we will pin it to the center back on the upper edge from the bottom part we just sewed together. Now we put the one side aside, then you sew together the other side, which in my case is plank red. And when you also deconstructed an old clothing piece, make sure that the inside is on the inside so that you have the right side on the right side. Once you're done with that, you also iron the seams like we did with the other parts. So before we sew the 2 bottom parts together, we also need an interfacing in the front where we want to have the buttons. This is just because the fabric is not that thick, and when you have buttons and buttonholes, this will stress the fabric in use, and therefore we attach an interfacing. I used 2.5 centimeters and then the length of the pattern piece, and then I just iron it on it, and I did it from both sides. Then you're just pinning the 2 bottom parts onto each other, and then you sew it together on the bottom line. Leave it open at the top. So one quick tip, when you're sewing the corner, you just sew, then you leave the needle inside, then you turn 45 degrees, you make 1 stitch, and then you make the rest. And when you do that, you will get just a sharp edge really easy. After sewing, you just cut off the edges, and then you iron the whole bottom part. And here as well, the better you iron, the better it will turn out in the end. And once you're done with that, you put the bottom part aside, and we start to make the upper part. Therefore, we pin fabric A and fabric B together. I started in the center back because there you can stitch the seams together so that you have exactly the same position. And then you just pin the rest of the part. And then we start by top stitching it on the top in this area. Once you're done with that, just iron it really good. And then we start making the tunnel in this area. So now we start by making the tunnel. Therefore, we zigzag it in this area, and it should look like this afterwards. And then we just fold the seam allowance and top stitch it here with 3 stitches to secure it. And once we're done with that, we will close the rest of the seam in the center front, and it will look like this. So you leave it open in the top because this is where our tunnel is going to be, and the rest of the center front you can just close with a normal top stitching. So, and when we did that to the center front, we also need to do it on the other edge. Therefore, we need to place the loop for the straps of the top. And then you just place the loop within the 2 fabric layers. And you also do the same with the zigzag and the top stitch of the seam allowance and leave 1.5 centimeters open when you top stitch it. Once you're done with sewing, it should look like this. As you can see here, these are the loops for the straps. And there's the center front with a hole for the ribbon. And after that, we will make the tunnel. Therefore, we're just going to top stitch 1.5 centimeters from the edge, and that will be our tunnel. So now we're done with the upper part and the bottom part, and now we will sew these pattern pieces together. But before, because we want to have a little gathering in the front area, we will top stitch with the longest stitch length that your sewing machine has in the area which is marked on the pattern piece as gather here. And then you can just here on 1 thread and you will gather the fabric in this area, and then you pin it with a lot of needles to secure it, and then you're top stitching it. After top stitching the upper part to the bottom part, you need to iron it pretty good, and make sure that you iron all the seam allowance to the direction of the bottom part, because the seam allowance will be hidden within the 2 fabric layers. So all in all, after you just top stitched the upper part to the bottom part just on one side, and then you're just closing it by folding the other side 1 centimeter, and then you pin it. And make sure that you pin it from one side in the seam shadow, and from the other side that it's above 1 millimeter next to the edge. And because it's going to be a reversible top, we want to make it look perfectly from both sides, and therefore I decided to even top stitch it with hand to secure it before I top stitch it with a sewing machine. And after you're done with the hand seam, you're just top stitching it in the seam shadow, and then you can get rid of the white hand sewing thread. And this is how the seam should look like. So now we're almost done. The only thing what is left is the buttons, and because again it's a reversible top, we need buttons from both sides, and I decided to go with white buttons on the side with the stripes, and on the other side I take 4 buttons which are covered in fabric. And make sure that the buttons have almost the same size, because you have 1 buttonhole for both sides, and if the buttons from one side are too small, the buttons will just open easily. So, and here's a quick tip: always try out the buttonholes on a separate piece of fabric, because then you can decide if it's too big or too small, and then you start doing it on the original piece you're sewing. So this is how the buttons look once they're finished, and then I'm just hand sewing all the buttons on the top. So to attach the straps, you need a safety pin, and you just pin the end of the strap to the safety pin, and then you go through the tunnel, and then you knot the strap on the back loop. And to make a nice ending of the ribbon, you just cut an edge and then you double fold it and top stitch it. And that's it. And here we go. This is how the top looks like when you wear it, and now I'm showing you several ways how you can wear it and how you can style it. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below and I will try to help you out.